Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Seth from the Psychedelic Society, and today we're going to be meeting up with Adam Bramlage from the Flow State Micro. Now, Adam, hey man,
Hey,
looking festive over there.
it's me. Do you like my tree?
I do, yeah. What kind of tree is that? What species? No,
That
I'm just
is the
kidding.
species general of artificial Christmas tree is.
Artificia triaeus. Oh yeah, those
Yes.
are classics. Yeah,
Yes.
man, I'm really glad to have you here today. Thanks for joining. I know we've been putting in a lot of work behind the scenes to get the microdosing course that we're putting together. The microdosing movement, it's almost an insult to call it a course, but just getting it together. It's been a lot of fun working with you, man. And I know that you've been having a lot of excitement beyond just the course in your own life lately. And I was hoping we could get started. I just want an update, man. I mean, forget all these people listening. I just want to hear, just kidding, people listening. I just want to hear what happened with the Denver City Council yesterday. Tell me about this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. This was amazing. This is the Denver Psilocybin Review Board. So back when Denver decriminalized, they created a review board that would report to the chief of police, the district attorney, a few different councilmen are on the board, and then a few people are on the board that are actually licensed psychedelic integration therapists, coaches, addiction therapists, that type of stuff. And I was asked to present the idea of microdosing to this panel for the first time. And it was absolutely amazing. I had the very conservative district attorney of Denver and the chief of police both at the end speak to how fascinated they were to hear about microdosing, how amazing it was. I mean, they were able to parrot back to me the most important parts of the presentation. The chief of police mentioned that he liked the part where you weren't getting high and that people were benefiting from mushrooms and they weren't tripping. And he made a funny comment about how anytime you hear of mushrooms, you hear of people tripping and getting really high. So he loved the idea. The district attorney was really moved by a couple of videos I showed by one of my clients that used microdosing to overcome 20 years of alcoholism. So the
Yeah.
district attorney actually said, I'm super fascinated about microdosing. And then she asked us to include that person's personal story in the report that we're going to be sharing with, or I should say, they're going to be sharing with Denver and the people of Colorado and the world in the coming few weeks. So right at the very end of all of these meetings, we introduced microdosing, and they said to make sure that we mention it in the report and that they're interested in continuing to learn about it. So it was really amazing to see that they were very open to the idea and asked for more information.
Man, I just want to say, thanks for being a representative for the mushroom. We're all trying to work for this boss, the higher ups there, the mycelial higher ups, but they're good people. They're good. They're good. Good entity to work for. And I saw that video you sent me. I took a minute to watch it, and it's pretty stunning to see a fully clad, police officer just saying what he's saying about microdosing, to see his excitement, kind of like a sparkle in his eyes, I'll be honest, it kind of looked like. And it was just really heartwarming for me to be like, yeah, we can really melt these barriers between us. And really, I think microdosing is, and I'll be honest with you, man, I was coming from a place maybe just a year ago or so that I was kind of against microdosing on a certain level. I was doing it myself to check it out, experiment, but I was like, I don't know if this is how we want to reach the public, if we want to be like to sneak it in and be like, oh, but it's not even about tripping, because we want that to be okay too, right? And we don't want people to be like, oh, a magic pill, I'll just eat it, it'll make my life better. And this is like the capitalist dilemma, like how do we not sell people solutions that don't really help? Like how do we help them also see that they need to do some work and whatnot? But it's a great, I don't think it's a Trojan horse, because the what you see is what you get. It actually is helpful right off the bat. But how do you look at, microdosing as a cultural phenomenon, as a step towards evolution in the psychedelic space?
I think microdosing could be the perfect, safe stepping stone for most everybody to enter into the world of psychedelic healing. I think that is what came across so importantly to the sheriff or the chief of police and the district attorney was that I was able to work with clients and give up a lifetime of addictions to alcohol, Percocet, antidepressants with a natural medicine that you're taking in subthreshold doses so you can still work your job or play with your kids or drive a car. So they were very excited to hear that you could use psilocybin in these small doses and still get amazing results, because for them, they had only heard about the big doses. Now, I know that
Hmm.
there's going to be big dose advocates out there that probably aren't happy with the idea of microdosing, or maybe they're worried I'm going to set them back, but I feel differently. I feel like the majority of the planet, especially maybe some of the older generation, aren't ready necessarily for that full dose experience, but they still need help in their day-to-day life. And I really feel like, much like Paul Stamets says, microdosing is going to become a new nootropic vitamin that most everybody is beginning to use. You know, people in Silicon Valley will put on their resume that they're microdosing, and that will be a competitive advantage to one firm over the other. Are they're working with people that are actually using something that's going to grow their brain. So I honestly think that microdosing is the answer to getting psychedelics out to the masses in a way that's safe and effective, and in a way where people aren't going to have the risk of a bad trip. And the great thing about microdosing is, if it doesn't work for you, if you don't enjoy it, maybe it heightens your anxiety, maybe you've taken a little too much, you just stop taking it. There's no long lasting effect. So I really think microdosing is part and parcel to the large dose journeys. I would not be where I am today without large dose journeys of psilocybin, ayahuasca, other plant medicines. So the large dose journey is different. You can't get what you get in a large dose journey from microdosing, but you get some amazing day-to-day help, guidance, and in my mind, it really helps your thought pattern by blocking the default mode network and creating new neural pathways, especially when you stack it with lion's mane.
Yeah, man. I've been learning a lot about the neurogenesis side of it, and it's really exciting to think about. We hear the word neurogenesis, we're like, oh, neuroplasticity, my brain is more flexible, cool. But what I've been really getting into is that there's growth, like there's actual growth, like there are new pieces of brain matter making real connections inside of ourselves. Like it's just an interesting thing to think about, and it's not like philosophical, it's like when we are taking these things and we're doing new stuff, trying making new patterns in our lives, like they are becoming embedded in new, I don't want to say trenches because you're not stuck there, but you're becoming embedded and concretized in these just new growth, new developments in the actual brain matter itself. And I just love to think about that. I think for me, it's just been an abstraction to think about, oh, like, growth in the brain or something like that, but that these neurons, they actually have scanning electron microscope imagery of these neurons developing in process in situ. And yeah, it just blows my mind to look at that and think that, wow, this is like, this is a real thing. What it kind of makes me scared is like, what if we are microdosing and having bad habits at the same time? Does it make them more embedded? Have you ever considered that?
That's a good question. You know, most of the data that I see from literally everyone I work with is it's lending to better habits, and it's not lending to worse habits. You know, people are smoking less cannabis, they're eating less junk food, they're exercising more, they're making amends, they're contacting people that maybe they've done wrong in the past. So there's a lot of benefits. I'm not seeing a lot of negatives. Again,
Yeah.
if people don't enjoy microdosing, they just stop. If it doesn't work for you, you just stop, and it's that simple. But back to the mushrooms and the growing of the new neural pathways. I mean, I am so surprised that this isn't a lead story on CNN, Fox, every news channel. I mean, we have figured out you can eat a mushroom that grows new neural pathways in your brain. And
Yeah.
you know, you talk about the thinking pattern. We get into that default mode network pattern, which is like this rut, or think of like this track down the ski hill. And every day we're just skiing that same damn negative track. Well, microdosing and psychedelics is like a fresh blanketing of snow falling in, and all of a sudden it's just fresh new powder lines all day. And that's what even lion's mane, even without
Fresh.
stacking this, yeah, even without stacking the psilocybin, lion's mane is creating new neural pathways. It's improving the ability for your brain to repair and heal itself, plus growing new neural pathways. That to me is a huge story. And it just surprises me that more people don't know about it and more people aren't talking about it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I wanted to like I'm going to play a little bit more devil's advocate here. You know, maybe like what are the worst case scenarios? And you know, it's just so great that you know I do this to you, and I've done this to James as well, or to Jim Fadiman and James Fadiman, Mr. Fadiman, Dr. Fadiman. But you know, it's just kind of a fun game to play. Like, okay, well, what about this? You know, what
Sure.
about you know? You're kind of saying, oh, well, people aren't going to alcohol. They're not watching as much TV. They're not eating as much junk food. What I'm hearing is like, okay, people aren't trying to escape reality with these different dopamine satiations. You know, they're not trying to just make themselves feel good, comfort themselves despite otherwise negative feelings. They're somehow maybe getting to the bottom of something. Or maybe, just maybe, the mushroom itself, right? It's like, it's the thing filling those cravings, right? And do you think that there's any potential to have a bad habit just being like, oh, I don't feel good. I need to take this microdose again. I need to take my microdose. I don't feel good.
Sure. I think anybody could have an addictive habit and they could get into microdosing too often. And again, to anybody new listening, it's important to remember that microdosing is not done 7 days a week, not even 6 days a week. You know, it's very important to have days off. So I'd say people could abuse microdosing if, you know, they took it every day. But the beauty of these mushrooms is, and their fungal intelligence is, if you take the microdose every day, they stop working for you.
Mm,
So it's got this kind of built-in system where if you try and abuse it, it won't let you. They won't work. You'll create a tolerance. So I think, you know, people could abuse it. Sure. I remember we were on the call with Dr. Fadiman and, you know, you mentioned sometimes you'll get tired in the evening and you'll want to power through. So you'll microdose at 8 p.m. or late in the evening.
yep.
And he mentioned maybe that isn't the right way to use it. But sure, I mean, you can abuse anything. You can eat too many Doritos and be addicted to eating Doritos. So yeah, there is a downside of the microdosing. I think the worst thing that could happen is people get addicted mentally to taking it 7 days a week. Then they build a
Yeah.
tolerance. Then it doesn't work for them anymore. Then they have to wait a few weeks without taking it to try and figure out, you know, and take it again. So sure, I mean, anybody could abuse it. The cool thing is if you take too high of a microdose, it makes you start to feel like you're tripping. You know, anxiety could be heightened. So for some people, there are these fail safes built in with the microdosing where if you try and abuse it, it just shuts off its power to you. So I would say that's the only way you could abuse it. I'd say the other way that you could abuse it is when people think it's a microdose, but they're really taking a medium dose. You know, I know a lot of people who don't appreciate the idea of subperceptual and they want to feel a little high. So I think the other
Uh-huh.
way that you could abuse it is if you were taking a little bit more than what would be considered a microdose. And I know plenty of people would do that as well. And you know,
Yeah,
maybe
and I
they're
know people that do it to great effect as well, right? It's like, well, maybe microdosing, it's our tagline for now, but maybe it's really, you know, when you say find your right dose, maybe some people need, I don't know, whatever that is to them. I don't want to make assumptions, but and for everybody listening, yeah, I was the guy that I'm basing that devil's advocacy story on. Like I was microdosing like twice a day for a few months at one point, just to really go all in and really try it out. And it was great to me in certain ways, but additionally, like I realized, okay, like I'm really starting to like depend on this, and so I just took a long break. It was really easy to stop doing it. I don't have a particularly addictive personality, I would say, but yeah. So just so you know, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, and
But
that's
you
that's
know,
why it's important for everyone to know that, you know, you don't take this 7 days a week. There are protocols, you know, whether it's one day on, one day off, or one day on, 2 days off, or 4 days on, three off. You want to set yourself up where you have days off. And the beauty of microdosing is there's a 48-hour effect or there's an afterglow. So you don't even really need to take it that second day. So more than
yeah,
anything, what we want to do with the movement is just educate people on how to safely and effectively use microdosing in their life. We want to educate them on what are proper dosages, what do we know from the data, and what we know from Dr. Fadiman's data and then Hein and Jacobin's data from the Microdosing Institute is over the last couple of years, they've dialed back the dosage. They've actually
hmm,
found that we're going to get more benefits from taking less of the substance. So I think that that's really important for your viewers to hear, and really important what we want to get across to the people is, less of this substance can have more positive benefits. And so we want to create that community. We want to bring people in. We want to educate them. And then I'm really excited about people educating us. There's
Me
going to
too,
be
man. Huge.
people there that are in this world and have great data and information to share with us. And I'm
Yeah.
really as excited about the community that's about to be built as I am about even just sharing all of this amazing information.
I just got off a meeting. We were talking about the Discord server, the online channel for everybody to kind of commune on an ongoing basis. And I think it's going to be great. We're going to we're going to have a lot of spaces for different conversations in the community, for everybody participating in the course. And then we're also going to allow people to kind of like level up or whatever if they've been around and they're really there, and helping to advocate and give them some more opportunities to create their own breakout sessions within the chat room and stuff like that. So we're really excited to just empower these conversations, because you're right, it's not really about just what we're teaching. This is a movement, and that's why we're not calling it a course or a class. It's a movement, and we're trying to just do our part to add some good momentum to it, and invite more momentum, invite good criticism too, because that helps us grow. We need to be able to not fend off, but to accept that we're not going to be right about everything, that we're going to learn things in the process. We're going to move forward. Like you were saying, they've dialed back the amount that they're dosing people because they've seen greater impacts. And that's the power of data, and that's the power of these group conversations and shared experiences. So, from the Psychedelic Society perspective, it's almost all we do, which is just hold space for important conversations amongst people in our community, and loving the ability to bring experts in like you, Hein, Jacobine, and of course, Dr. Fadiman, and just really weave that together with our community's voice itself as people are asking good questions, just getting started, and sharing from their own experiences. Yeah, so you can see I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and that's the beauty with microdosing and this movement, is that there's really very limited clinical trials. Microdosing has come across to the masses because of a civilian scientist movement, which started when Dr. Fadiman wrote Psychedelic Explorer's Guide and began to receive thousands and thousands and thousands of emails. So that's what we're hoping to do with the microdosing movement, with what they're doing in the Netherlands at the Microdosing Institute, is we want to bring everybody together where we can collect this data, because right now we have to further educate people, like educating the DA and the councilman, all these people. And somebody on that board brought up the idea that, we need to be doing more clinical trials on these small doses. So microdosing is special because microdosing has been pushed forward, not by clinical trials, but by civilian scientists and personal guinea pigs like you and me and all these beautiful listeners out there, people that were like, you know what? I'm not going to wait till the FDA approves this. I got some real shit going on in my life. They said a little dose is going to work. I'm going to try it. And so the movement is hopefully gathering all of these beautiful civilian scientists who've been doing this work on their own for days, weeks, months, years, and getting us all into a place together where we can share that data and we can collect it. I think it's going to be really exciting to get everybody together and learn a lot from all these wonderful civilian scientists.
Yeah, man. And in some way, I have such a bad taste in my mouth around the term collecting data, just where we're at with big tech and all that. But to think that there's a way to really bring this information that is so valuable to share. It's like really like every person's testimonial of growth, change, and overcoming, which I've heard probably thousands of them by now. I mean, it's the only reason I'm doing any of this, is just because people are like, I was teaching people how to grow gourmet medicinal mushrooms, and it was just like, yo, but really, man, like, we need shrooms. And so anyway, but that's just led me down this whole path, and to really give that place for that conversation to live, to archive people's experiences in a way that moves the whole movement forward. And I'm really excited that this won't be just a one-time class, that we're going to have we're going to have it as a digital download later, but we're also going to have like one of our support groups, one of our integration circles just for microdosing after this. So this is going to be an ongoing part of our offering, and it's great going there with you, man.
Absolutely. And I want to say to anyone out there that is more of a large dose person and they're wondering, could microdose work for them? I have to tell you, I really think microdosing works well with that large dose journey. You can only do a large dose journey once a month, every couple of months, once a year. So I really think microdosing is a way for you still to stay connected to the plant medicines, to the fungi, and benefit your day-to-day life. You know, more than anything, what I see with my clients and what I see in all the data or emails or whatever you want to call it is that this is helping people, right? This is changing their life for the better. I've seen it help with major drug addiction. Much like Danielle says, psilocybin, these plant medicines act like addiction disruptors, and there's something magical. I'm talking about people who've been on drugs for years having very little, if no withdrawal, due to the fact that these mushrooms are working in their system. So the movement is about getting the education and information about there. It's about bringing everyone together. And it's for new people too. If you have no experience with microdosing, this is also a great place for you to come and learn a lot and tag into a community, because the community that I'm creating, the community they've created in the Netherlands, the community that Dr. Fadiman created, the community that you guys are creating, it's all about bringing us together. And together we can really fight for more clinical trials and to make this legal. I mean, I had a question with the Denver Psilocybin Review Board where somebody asked me, you know, Adam, you were in cannabis for 10 years. How would you see microdosing potentially rolling out one day? And I got to literally pitch and plant the seed to the DA and the councilman and the chief of police that, hey, we could take the medical cannabis model for microdosing and we could set it up in a way where you have to go to your doctor to get a prescription. It has to be a real condition like depression, anxiety, trauma, and then the tax dollars from the microdosing, you also get a therapist. So you don't just get a monthly supply of the microdosing, you get free connection to a psychedelic integration therapist. If it's deep trauma, a trauma therapist. But again, I got to pitch to them the idea of, hey, we could do prescription microdosing. A doctor could verify that the person legitimately needs this. And then we could have a counselor following up with these people afterwards, making sure that they survived. Later on in the summit, the councilman started talking about whether or not microdosing could be used to help the heroin addicts on Skid Row want to potentially get off drugs and come back to society. So the seed is planted. Hopefully Denver is going to be the place, but I really do think that the microdosing prescription model with community support, with a real therapist, integrative specialist, is really something that we can bring to the people sooner than later.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool vision. I really appreciate it. I think that that's really digestible by a lot, like, quote unquote, the mainstream, a lot of people like. And I think on our side of things, we're really liking this perspective of, well, just decriminalize it and people will have access. There's no downside to trying it. And if people can grow their own mushrooms, then they're going to have a powerful relationship to that fungal intelligence that you were speaking of earlier. There doesn't have to, we don't all have to cultivate mushrooms, but if there's a cultivator in every community, then that creates an opportunity for really people to have access and not make it about like the large corporations providing a top-down solution when the only reason they're providing the solution is because they denied the bottom-up solution in the first place, right? But simultaneously, I'll hold space for both potential models. I'm not here to say how this has to happen. I know it is happening. I'm here to recognize it.
Maybe there can be a model where it is decrim so everybody can grow it on their own. And then those people that don't want to mess with growing it and want to hand that over to somebody that does it professionally and know that they're getting a safe, reliable dose every time, they can hand that over to the people that are good at that. They can do that at a GMP certified facility and follow all the same specifics of food and drug and cannabis and all that. So I think it's possible. But, you said something when we were talking with Dr. Fadiman weeks ago that I now hear him recite in a lot of his talks. And that's just the idea that with mushrooms, you can grow a year's supply of microdosing in a shoebox, right? And just how different of a model that is for big pharma or society. And that's what we want to get across in this education and this movement is, we want to let you know that you can do this on your own. You can grow your own mushrooms. You can make your own capsules. You don't have to wait till it's legal. You can, I'm not saying do anything illegal, but I'm saying
there's a lot of areas that are decriminalized now.
Right. In the areas that are decriminalized.
America, it's happening fast, and yeah, sure, it's not the majority of places, but I don't know how long it's going to be before we start to look at it in a really different light. I think we have the luxury of being in a well-refined bubble of psychedelic people, but and places. But yeah, I think it's amazing that that opportunity will strike more and more around the nation and globe in the coming months, maybe.
Yeah, and what's big, and the district attorney said the same thing. What moved them more than anything were these personal stories that I
Yeah,
shared, before and after videos, people sharing on day one of getting sober how much they're struggling, and then 8 months later seeing this person that doesn't even look the same. And that's what this movement is about. There's so many stories out there that we don't know about, that we want to gather, that we want to find out about. I mean, there's new conditions every day that Dr. Fadiman gets emails from where this is helping people. And that's the same thing that I'm seeing with my clients, is whether it's traumatic brain injury or Lyme or migraines or trauma, something's really happening to help these people through it. And the term that continues to come into my mind and their mind is they're literally able to rewire their brain out of a place where it was wired for depression and trauma, and they rewire and they rewrite their story.
yeah,
And that is the psilocybin mushroom specifically. And maybe the lion's mane too, but the psilocybin has got something magical going on in the brain, and it really allows people to look at their trauma and rewrite that story positively. And that's why we really need to continue to educate people on how they can do this safely and effectively.
yeah. And I'm very excited to hear about more and more studies that are going on and happening, because yeah, the more data that we get from top universities and things like that, the more general trust is going to come, and the more people will show up, and like we'll see that this continues to spread. One of the most interesting studies that I've ever heard about, I actually haven't looked at the study itself, but it was Paul Stamets. I think he was talking on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about a microdosing study that was done with mice, where it was actually micro versus macro dosing. And now I don't necessarily think it's great how they do these tests, but these are the results. They were like electrifying the floor of the cage that the mice were in to give them PTSD intentionally. To make them, and it's like, so they have ring a bell, 30 seconds later, buzz the floor. And then obviously this is a horrible experience for the mice, and they're remembering this. And they tested two things, a microdose and a macrodose, based on body mass, or, so it's a really, really tiny amount for the mice, but it's comparative to what we would take. And they were seeing that the microdose actually helped them overcome the PTSD faster than with the macrodosing. And I think that's really curious to me. And yeah, I mean, I think that we think that the power of psychedelics is often in the larger dose, that you need to go to a different part of the cosmos to experience healing or to experience something new. But what I love about microdosing and psychedelics in general is that their ability to awaken the inner healer, like the ability to look inside of ourselves and see that when I get a cut on my skin, it goes away. My body heals that. And to think that there's a equivalency on the emotional, psychological levels is really empowering. And to remember that, we aren't just damaged goods. We are in motion. We're changing over time. And yeah, so I think that that's one of the most powerful things, is that a lot of people that come to psychedelics leave. They often leave in a much better place than they came. If you get started on microdosing, you don't necessarily have to continue to microdose for the rest of your life. Like, you can get over the shit that's holding you back and move on. I think that our psychedelic society isn't here to hoard a giant population and get everybody. Like, we want people to pass through. We
Mm-hmm.
want people to show up, get the help they're looking for, have the conversations that they need, get some shit off their chest, get some things off their chest, and move on. Because I think we really just want everybody to get back to the world and do their part in trying to save it a little bit.
You, you
That's
know,
my personal echo. That's my ethos.
no, but
But
you speak to microdosing specifically, because what I've found doing it myself more than 2 years is that life gets so good, you start to set up such positive patterns that I forget to microdose, and that I'm
yeah,
actually microdosing so much less. And I see the same progression in all my clients, where they might need it more often in those first few months, but then after those first few months, they're not needing it as much as at all. So I have some people that will microdose once a week, and that's all they need it. And then I have some people that will microdose for 6 months and they won't need it anymore. And that's kind of the beauty of this microdosing, and why it's a very different model than antidepressants or big pharma is actually the longer people microdose, the less they end up needing it and actually microdosing it. And that's the beauty of, for me specifically, the psilocybin. It is like this, it's a teacher. And you can't hang out in the large dose area all the time. Like I said, you can only do that a few hours a month maybe, and you need to be in a safe set and setting. What is so amazing about microdosing is you're integrating the fungal intelligence into your day-to-day life, right? You don't like eat a large dose and then make breakfast for the kids and go throughout your day. So, but these microdoses, they enhance your day-to-day life. They allow you to look at things differently than maybe normally you would. Your kid spills the milk. You're going to react to that differently when you're microdosing as opposed to when you're not. And it's just that slight mood enhancement. And what happens over time is people need less of it. And that's just a really amazing model for a medicine, is that the longer you take it, the less you need it.
Yeah. And then I don't know if this is really how it works, but to combine the neurogenesis aspect with that, to think that, oh, when you're having that better reaction, you're also ingraining that better reaction into who you are, into who you want to be, into who you're becoming. So that's really beautiful to think that, oh, you're not just better because you're on this medicine. You're not because you're using, because you're taking the magic pill. You're better because you're using it, like you're approaching reality from a different perspective that is then like embedded into your identity.
Yep.
And that's fascinating to me. I'd love that.
Yeah, and I heard another great quote from Paul Stamets the other day on why he thinks microdosing is so important. And he actually thinks that microdosing is going to lead us to the answers for global warming, and is going to actually help us to solve all of these problems that we've been unable to solve. And his idea is, if people are
Yes.
microdosing, they're more creative, they're more excited. If they're more excited, they're spending more time working on new projects. If they're happy, they're going to bed at night looking forward to waking up the next day working on this new project, So I think microdosing is a way for us to get out of that old rutted system of thinking and to start getting ourselves into a more creative place. I was just
Yeah.
talking with Dr. Fadiman about the famous study he did with large dose psychedelics and problem solving. Are you familiar with that? It's out of the Psychedelic
Yeah,
Explorer's
please.
Guide.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk to him about this in week 3 of the class as well. But he did this amazing experiment out near Stanford, Menlo Park. And he had a bunch of people, architects, designers, journalists, like every profession you could think of, who were struggling to solve a problem, right? Maybe the architect couldn't come up with the design that the client approved, or maybe this person was. So anyway, they give these people a large dose of psychedelic, and they allow them over the course of those 8 hours to work on their problem and see if they could solve their problem. And after the course of this study, literally everybody solved their problem. And literally everybody that presented a design, specifically the architects, to their clients, everything was approved, excuse me.
Yeah.
So there is this amazing correlation between people who are stuck trying to solve things and the use of a psychedelic to break them through that. And so we'll have to have Dr. Fadiman talk about that study, but they literally did a study with problem solving where they found out psychedelics helped you to solve the problems faster and more efficiently.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I want to just jump back a little bit to what you're saying about like Paul Stamets' statement about healing the earth by microdosing people, and it's really funny because I think that our mind immediately goes to like, no, Adam, we need robots to clean the garbage patch out of the Pacific Ocean, And it's like, well, at the same time, like, I think that we treat our own bodies like on a micro level, right? Here's the micro, macro, different, on the micro level in ourselves, we treat the world the same way, right? We like litter it with a bunch of garbage, bad food, things that it doesn't really necessarily benefit from, but we just kind of throw it in there. Bad relationship to the micro, the self. And if you look at the earth as the macro self, I think that it really, when enough of us wake up, I'm not trying to say woke here, but if enough of us wake up to really giving ourselves what we need, then we can really wake up collectively to giving the earth what it needs. Because we can build those robots, but if we just need to build more of them because people don't care and they're still just littering more and more and more, we're not really solving problems. And I do think that the beginning of solving these problems really just comes down to love, like loving ourselves and having the opportunity to love our families. And I get why people are pissed. Like I get that people have low tolerance, they're frustrated. Life is difficult and increasingly difficult, especially in the times we're living in today. Like it's excessively difficult for a lot of people that have entrenched, just responsibilities. And, I don't have kids, but, I know you do. And I'm sure that all these things, as lovely as they might be, you don't always get the opportunity to approach it with love. But I really think that microdosing, microdosing, the relationship to psychedelics in general really helps me reevaluate my relationships to the world and just kind of tweak them intentionally and become more of an author in this case than I am just like reading the story of my life. I'm like, no, this is the story I want to write. And anyway, that's probably enough.
No, but I think more than anything, it just comes down to mushrooms. And I know that you're a mushroom lover, but I think that most of the answers we're facing right now could be solved with mushrooms. You look at the pollution problem and you look at oil spills. Paul Stamets already figured out that oyster mushrooms clean up oil spills and debris. And we know that we have mushrooms that can eat plastic and concrete and do all kinds of amazing things. So more than anything, these plant medicines are kind of making, in my opinion, a last-ditch effort to get into as many humans as possible so that we can come back to a connection with Earth and we can save our race before we extinct it, because we are going down a really sharp, fast path to just craziness. Look at what we're in the midst of right now with a global pandemic, and we're not allowed to sing and dance or hug people. I mean, shit's getting crazy. And that's also why, in my opinion, everyone's talking about psychedelics right now. Everybody's talking about microdosing because, these mushrooms, these plant medicines, they've been put here for a reason. They're here for healing, and if used in the right set and setting with the right people, can just literally change lives and rewire your mind, take the traumas you've experienced and get you to a place where you can move forward and be a happy, positive individual. So for me, it's these mushrooms. They're just so powerful. The functional ones, the psychedelic ones, they're here to help us.
Yeah. I mean, I also carry a huge emphasis on the mushroom because it's super accessible. It's really sustainable. You don't have to go to the jungle or, it doesn't take years. It takes a couple months. You can grow it in a shoebox under your bed. It's amazing. It's so crazy how accessible it is and just how safe it is as well. And, I do think that there's thousands of these teacher plants and compounds that will, that people have relationships to and find various benefits. We don't have enough space or data or knowledge to talk about all those things, but I am just stoked to think about what's coming down the pipeline and what's really helping people. And even with cannabis becoming such a, it's like cannabis in a weird way really opened the door for psychedelics, but it's like psychedelics have really stepped through that door, I feel like, or they are stepping through that door. And I really want cannabis to be on the bandwagon as well. I don't hear a lot about it being like it was almost like the OG, like, oh, medical cannabis, but I haven't heard it have nearly as much impact or effect in the way that generally we're kind of looking at psychedelics as having. And I really wonder what's coming down the pipeline with that master plant, like just such an incredible plant.
Yeah, and you remind me of something I read the other day that Ram Dass, when he was Dick Albert and Tim Leary, developed a system for deciding whether a plant was psychedelic or not. And they actually deemed cannabis to be a psychedelic. So according to Leary and Ram Dass, cannabis can be a psychedelic. When you eat enough of an edible or you smoke enough of a concentrate or enough of just a really good flower, you can definitely have some psychedelic type experiences, some synesthesia, some stuff like that. So I think more than anything, cannabis is what brought me to California 13 years. This is a very powerful and sacred plant. She totally opened the door for psychedelics. She kicked it down. And let's be real. Cannabis is helping millions and billions of people with pain and with
Yeah.
seizure conditions, epilepsies, helping children. So cannabis is a sacred, amazing plant. And we have to really be grateful to it for kicking the fucking door open, because that's what
It's
it's
amazing.
done for
Yeah.
psychedelics. And I just hope that the psychedelic space um, doesn't turn out to be as competitive as the cannabis space did. It went from being to community to stab your brother in the back. So let's hope that we can keep the love and the perspective and make this about access to people of all colors, all races, and especially to low income and minorities. So let's hope that we can make this affordable and we can make this accessible, because I really do think specifically microdosing psilocybin is the mental health breakthrough of the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Really well said. Thank you. Yeah, this is powerful work. And I just want to say thanks to everybody that's showing up for this live and just showing up to be a part of this journey with us. It's a movement, and we're not leaders in the movement. We're just helping to walk the path with everybody else. And I guess, maybe that's like kind of a leadership role that we're taking right now, but we don't know all the answers, and we're really just excited to be on this journey. I know that that's how I got here. I know it's how you got here. It's just seeing the unbelievable potential. I mean, I feel at sometimes like, are we on an infomercial right now? Are we just trying to sell these? Like, no, we're not even selling. Like, we're not selling these. Like, we're just talking about the crazy amount of experiences that have come to us, and I wouldn't believe it if I wasn't in my perspective, I wouldn't believe this, and
Well,
just the
you
transformation.
reminded me of this great microdosing commercial I've been working on, and it's going to be a parody of all the drug commercials you see on TV, right? But
Yeah.
at the end, it's going to be like side effects include happiness, laughing, singing, more sex
Yeah.
with your partner, and just like list
Right.
the list of all the benefits, but like do it in a way where we're really making fun of all the side effects that you get from pharmaceutical medications. And that's the beauty of this, is it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. This is helping everybody. And we need to hear from more people. We need more people joining this movement and telling me and Seth their experience. And like you said, we're just here speaking out from our own personal experience. I know for me, for 39 years, I had a real addiction to misery and depression, and I used cannabis, and cannabis was fantastic, but it never really helped me dive into the wound and heal it the way that microdosing did. So, that's why I left cannabis. Was I really believe that this is what most everyone needs to check out and experience. And again, this, in my opinion, is the future of mental health.
Heck yeah, man. We got a couple of questions in here, so I mean, I feel like we've said a
Beautiful.
lot.
Let's take them.
Real quick though, I will say, we are here. We just want to let everybody know we're doing an online course, the Microdosing Movement, starting December 13th. It's a 6-week course with 6 classes, once every Sunday, and then 6, we call it community. And it's essentially an integration circle to talk about your remaining questions, things that are coming up for you in the process. We're also going to have a journal that's a part of this. We're going to be encouraging people to track themselves, or whether they're using the journal or not, to talk about their experiences with microdosing or their curiosities about it in the future. We're going to additionally have a Discord channel that's a part of this and really allow people to weave themselves together and, to take those same questions and conversations and hopefully make some real world connections. We did a course called Psychedelic Summer School this past summer, and it was beautiful. We had a lot of people report to us that they'd made real friends in that course. And there's a few things that we're doing to try to improve the amount of organic, or just like increase the amount of organic connections that are resulting from this, because that's the deepest hope that we have, that we can gather around the inspiration and the hope and the depth of knowledge and information that are offered by our experts that come in and help us with this. And then as we do that, we can meet one another around that warmth, and we can continue to move forward together as a psychedelic society. So that's my little pitch. Thank you, Adam.
Beautiful, beautiful. We're going to have Dr. James Fadiman week 3. He's going to be there for his infamous question and answers. So you're going to have the opportunity to ask the modern father of microdosing any last question you want. We're going to talk about the history of microdosing, what we can find on it. We got some really, really great stuff. And again, we're really excited to hear from you and your experience as well.
So we got three great questions all coming from Fiestic. I'm going to start with this one I really like. It's pretty straightforward. Adam, how do you find the correct dose for an individual?
That's great. They actually created this really awesome rhyme that you can remember, and it goes start low and go slow. So
Mm,
what that would mean is you would start at the very bottom of what's deemed a microdose. So with psilocybin, anywhere from 0.05 to zero point 0.4 is considered a microdose. What I find, and what most people find, is between 0.05 and 0.15 or zero point 0.2 is that subperceptual range. Once you get 0.2 to zero point 0.4, that's for most people not a microdose. So my advice to you would be start low, go slow, start with 0.05 or 100 milligrams to start, go through your day. If you're not noticing anything, if you're not feeling high or like a trip might be coming on, you may have found your sweet spot. And again, it's important that you give microdosing at least a month. You want to do a month trial. It's like little baby step improvements every day. And if you were to give up after 2 or 3 days because you didn't notice anything, you really wouldn't get the benefits of it, which is why we're giving everyone a journal, and which is why all my clients are also journaling throughout the process, so you can really notice the minute stuff that you're changing and flipping into a positive in your life.
right on, man. Yeah, and it's so funny how how do you track something that you're not even supposed to feel? I really think the journal is just so helpful for that.
Yep.
All right, here's another question coming from PS Stack. Let's see what it says. If you have been through a bad trip, is it more likely to experience it again, even with microdosing? Hmm.
So it's very rare that microdosing would induce a bad trip. I've never heard of it inducing a bad trip. I don't think Dr. Fadiman has any data of it inducing a bad trip. Again, we're talking about minute amounts of psilocybin. When I say 0.05 or zero point 0.1, that's like 5% of 1 gram. That's a very, very, very small amount. So if you've had a bad trip in the past, I would bet it had to do with not the right set and setting, probably not the right time in your life, probably didn't have a guide or a safe place to be in, and you probably weren't mentally and physically prepared. What I would say is that microdosing isn't going to get you back to a place like that. Not at all. Not unless you take way too much the first time you take it and you're a sensitive person and you get that anxious feeling of starting to trip. For
But
somebody like
that's why we say start slow and go slow.
start low and go slow. Yeah. So you really want to start low, right? And let's say you go 0.05 day one and you don't think you notice anything. Well, go zero point 0.1 the next day. And if you notice something, you know you need to dial it back. So
Yeah.
it's the fun part where you get to be a guinea pig. But when you're dealing with less than half a gram of psilocybin, more like quarter of a gram, you really want to stay down into like, the zero point 0.1. I don't think you have any worry of it inducing a bad trip. This isn't anywhere near enough to send you down that path again.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Let's see, we got a couple more. We have a new question. Do you do you notice a difference between stems and caps? Do you prefer one over the other for microdosing? I think we both have some thoughts on this.
Why don't
You
why
mind
don't
if I
you
take
why don't
this
you
one?
take this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, take this one.
Okay, so I teach people how to cultivate mushrooms. I've been using mushrooms a lot myself, and this is just hot. It's debatable. It's so what that means to me is the fact that there's a debate going on about this kind of ongoingly is that the difference, if there is one, isn't super significant or it isn't consistent. Maybe one strain of mushrooms, the cap and stem is really different, or another that's not so different. And at the end of the day, because of these various debates around, like one mushroom could be stronger than another, the cap could be stronger than a stem, all these various things, we really recommend that you try to get a batch of mushrooms that's going to last you a long time and store it properly, but powderize the entire thing. powderize it as, so put it into a coffee grinder is really the best way, and just make that one homogeneous mix. So it doesn't really matter, is it a cap or a stem or this or that? You just have one homogeneous mix, and you can dose from that more freely. Anything to add, Adam?
I love it. I would say, why would you do one without the other? They're supposed to be together, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
you put it all together in the coffee grinder, and you blend it up, and it becomes one.
In the Mazatec, oh, sorry, go for it.
Well, I just heard recently someone mentioned that they did some kind of study or test where they figured out that there's even psilocybin in the mycelium that's growing the fruiting bodies, and that some
Oh, yeah.
people are saying that, oh, don't take the fruiting bodies, take the mycelium. It's more active in the mycelium. So what I would say to people is the more I learn about mushrooms, the more I just have to say, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
people want to know, why is psilocybin so healing? Why does it help with addiction? Why does it make people love themselves again? I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. But what I can tell you is I tested it on myself first, and now all of these amazing people are coming to me who are using it also for positive and things in their life. So I don't know that the cap is better than the stem. It's better together. It's like that Jack Johnson song, Better Together, where it's like, just put that.
You want to put it on in the background?
Yeah, put it on for me. But anyway, I'd say do both. I don't know which is better. I
Yeah.
just do them all together.
Well, I really like what you said about, they're better together. And, it reminded me that the Mazatec people, they don't even eat one mushroom at a time. They believe that they need to be in pairs, that they need to have a companion. So you eat two mushrooms at once. You never eat just one.
I love
And
that.
I just think that's kind of amazing. And what you're saying about the mycelium is, I'm seeing this increasingly as well. In fact, some of the people I know that are kind of trying to create some pharmaceutical style startups with psilocybin, they're focused on the mycelium because it's just as potent, if not having very different, kind of like different alkaloids available. So, and this is true for all species of mushrooms, that the mycelium and the mushroom have different medicinal compounds. So why wouldn't it be true for psilocybin? And to see that that's the case, I mean, it is really easy to grow the mycelium, even if you don't let it go to fruiting body. So this might be a focus for my courses in the future. Is like, hey, how to cultivate psychedelic mycelium? Like why, if we're trying to just get it to people at home, make it accessible, why have to take it all the way? Like just get to the point that works, and have your medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that might be the future for business, is that might be the loophole around getting it out to the people is, oh, this is just mycelium. This isn't a mushroom. This is just something growing on these grains of whatever. It's not a
Yeah, it's
mushroom.
mold. It's fancy mold.
This is mold, your honor. This isn't a mushroom. So no, we just don't know. We don't know what's better. What I would say is nature is pretty damn perfect, right? If they gave you a mushroom with a cap and stem, they probably want you to eat the whole thing. And if you're a Mazatec, make sure you got a buddy.
Man, well, we've been on for almost an hour, Adam, and I think we've done our piece today. I'm really excited that today's been a great reminder that, I don't need to worry as much as I do about the specificity of all the content, and making sure that all of our bullet points are like extremely specific. Because, you and the rest of our team are really so well equipped, so much experience. I mean, wow, between you, the Microdosing Institute, and James Fadiman, I think we must have like 60 plus years of, I mean, we put
Well,
30 plus because it's an easy bet, but like, I mean, it's just
yeah,
it's a lot of experience.
it is, and I want to take a minute to just mention who the Microdosing Institute is. But if
Yeah,
anyone
please.
were to follow Dr. Fadiman 5, 6, 7 years ago, the first people he talked about collecting research was this group out of the Netherlands called Microdosing.nl, who is now the Microdosing Institute. And these guys have more than, I think, 4,500 members on their private group on Facebook. They've been collecting data for years. So with Hein and Jacobin, that's another 30 years of experience and many years in the psychedelic game. So we've literally got the foremost experts on microdosing in Europe, and the father of modern microdosing here in the United States being a part of this 6-week course. So again, you're not going to be able to get this information anywhere else. And we really look forward to learning a lot from you guys as well.
Yeah, it's such an honor. Yeah, we'll have nothing else to say besides look for tickets in our bio and have a great weekend, everybody. Much love.
Have
Thank
a
you
good
very much.
weekend. Thanks, Seth. Take care,
Yeah,
brother.
you
All
will.
right, bye now.
You will. All right, everybody. And also, if you want to know more information about the Psychedelic Society, you guys feel free to check out our Instagram, check us out on Facebook. We'll be launching a new website really soon, and that's going to include a membership model. Also, for anybody that's listening that doesn't know, we just switched all of our integration circles to be completely free. That's right, totally donation based. We want to make sure that accessibility is the first point of contact. We want to make sure that anybody can come to these because we want people from all walks of life joining us. And yes, donations are definitely helpful. We aren't doing any of this work on a big budget. We don't have any funding outside of our own work. So for anybody that wants to make a donation to us this holiday season, psychedelicsocietysf.org will be up and running shortly. And yeah, we'll be there to bring you into our collective space as new members, and as well as anybody that just wants to leave a donation one time for a group that they went to, or just help us out on this mission to hold space for the emergence of a contemporary psychedelic culture. That's what's happening right now. And we have to reclaim a lot of pieces of just this fragmented fractal that has been broken by prohibition and colonization and a lot of challenges that have happened, it seems like, in the past, but we're still facing today. So help us out in this mission, be part of the change, and get into some psychedelic community service, whether it's on your own or with a collective. So thank you all very much for being here, and it's a pleasure to do this work. Have a great weekend. Peace.